Welcome back to part 3. Now we're going to move on now to looking at sound recordings, which is point 4 in your lecture outline. Now sound recordings, films, broadcasts, they have one thing in common, and that is that they are derivative works. But they will usually be based on original, literary, dramatic, musical and artistic works. And there's no requirement that the derivative work would be original. And the rationale is that we protect the substantial sums of money that are invested in such works, the derivative works. So what do I mean by derivative works? I mean a work that is based on something else. Copyright will not subsist in a work which is a copy of another sound recording or film, and that's section 5A2, section 5B4 of the Act. So when you go out and you buy a CD such as this, you are not buying a copyright work. If you remember, we talked about this in lecture 1. Your CD, which this doesn't seem to be a CD in here. The CD that you buy does not actually have copyright in it. You are not buying a copyright work. What you are buying is a copy of the master recording. However, if you then copy it, you will be indirectly infringing the master recording, the copyright in the master. So, let's break it down now, which is section 4.1 in your notes. So, section 5, subsection 1 of the CDPA says, sound recording is a recording of sounds from which sounds may be reproduced, or a recording of the whole or any part of a literary, dramatic or musical work from which sounds reproducing the work or part may be reproduced, regardless of the medium on which the recording is made or the method by which the sounds are reproduced or produced. So that means any medium at all. So for example, let's take us back to an old medium, a vinyl record. Here we go. That is an old-fashioned type of recording of a sound. So that's one type. And then we have the CD. That's a newer type. We have the sound on a film. This is the DVD, but we have sound on the film. Now we also have MP3s. Now you can save MP3s on your computer. You can save them on a disc. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a disc that I've made of MP3s to play in my car. You can save them onto your iPod. So it doesn't matter the medium on which they're saved and recorded. The medium is totally irrelevant. What is relevant is that it is a reproduction of sounds from which a sound may be reproduced. And it's a recording of any part of a literary, dramatic or musical work which you can reproduce. So regardless of the medium, just the fact that we can reproduce it. There's no requirement that the sound should be music. So for example, if you think about it, I'm sure those of you that have got iPods, you've got books, spoken word. I know I have. So no requirement that it should be music. No requirement that the work should be original. So if all of us now sing a different version of a song that we all know, let's say the national anthem, and we each record it, copyright will subsist in each recording. So that's sound recordings. Move on to 4.2 in your notes, films. And films are defined in section 5, subsection 1. A recording on any medium from which a moving image may by any means be produced. Now this definition is wide enough to include not just DVDs, but also video games, and it also covers the sound that accompanies the moving images. Now we move on to broadcast, which is point 4.3 in your notes, and it's defined in section 6 subsection 1. And I also want you to look at the later Copyrights and Related Rights Regulations of 2003. And it's defined as a transmission by wireless telegraphy of visual images, sounds or other information which is capable of being lawfully received by members of the public or is transmitted for presentation to members of the public. Now the definition of wireless telegraphy, which is in section 178, includes satellite but excludes wire or fibre optics. And the right of the broadcast work is separate from any right in the underlying work. It's a completely different right. Now in order to attract UK copyright, the broadcast has to be transmitted within the UK. I think that seems fairly obvious, but it's worth saying anyway. Now where this is by satellite, the place where the broadcast is made is the place from which the signals carrying the broadcast are transmitted to the satellite. So for example, if the signals that are carrying the broadcast are being transmitted from, let's say, Croydon, there's a place there, that is obviously within the UK. So to attract copyright protection, the signal must have been transmitted to the satellite from within the UK. We're going to move on now then to point 5 in your lecture outline, typographical arrangements of published editions, which of course we have looked at in the very first lecture, and we talked about it in lecture 1 and we talked about it in lecture 2 as well. So copyright subsists in the layout of a published work, whether the whole or in part of one or more of the literary or dramatic or musical works. So this protects works which are themselves out of copyright. If you remember, I said to you, if I photocopy a few pages from a Penguin Classics copy of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, although it is out of copyright, Chaucer having been dead for quite some time, there'd be a copyright in the typographical layout. In other words, the type and the way it's arranged on the page of my edition, and that's what will have been infringed. And if you remember, I showed you a picture from Q magazine to explain to you what typographical layout means. And here I'm going to take a break.